I wasn't failing the class, but I was close enough to feel the pressure every time I stepped into that room. It was called Modern Literary Analysis, but it felt more like Psychological Warfare 101 with the way Ms. Rowe ran it. She had a presence that filled the room before she even spoke. Sharp, deliberate, and always dressed like she didn't care what anyone thought, but you could tell everything was chosen with precision. Fitted blouses, pencil skirts, low heels that still managed to echo across the tile louder than any other teacher's boots. She was the kind of woman you didn't forget, even if you tried. No one ever talked while she talked. No one ever turned in work late twice. And no one, at least as far as I knew, ever challenged her without getting quietly, devastatingly shut down in front of the whole class. She was 38. I only knew that because someone found her old grad school photo online and the class group chat exploded for a day. Even in that blurry picture, she had the same steel in her eyes. I was 22 in my last semester, and if I failed this course, I wouldn't graduate on time. That fact lived in the back of my mind like a dull headache. 2 days ago, she handed back our midterms. Mine had a red mark on the first page, a B-. But it wasn't the grade that got me. It was the comment she left in the corner, underlined twice. "You're holding back. Stop performing and say something real." I didn't know what the hell that meant, but it stayed with me. The next class, she dismissed everyone at the end with her usual crisp, "That's all." Then, just as I was slinging my bag over my shoulder, she looked at me for the first time that day and said, "Mr. Keene, stay a moment." The room emptied fast. I stood by her desk, heart doing something weird against my ribs. She didn't speak right away, just closed her laptop, folded her hands, and looked up at me like she was reading a text I hadn't written yet. "You're drifting," she said. "You've got potential, but you're hedging, afraid to say what you mean." I opened my mouth to argue, but nothing good came to mind. Then she said, "Come back tomorrow evening. My office. We'll discuss a rewrite." I hesitated. "Tomorrow?" She tilted her head slightly. "Unless you're not serious about graduating." "No, I am. I'll be there." She nodded once and turned her attention back to her screen. Like that settled everything. All day I couldn't focus. I skipped dinner. I told my roommate I had to study. I even showered twice, which was ridiculous, but I couldn't shake the nerves. Every time I thought about her voice saying, "You're hedging," something tightened in my chest. At 6:58, I was already outside her office door. It was quiet in this wing of the building. All the other professors were long gone. The janitor's cart was parked down the hall. The lights flickered slightly with the hum of tired electricity. Her office door was cracked just enough to show the glow of a desk lamp. I knocked once. "Come in," came her voice. I pushed the door open. It looked different at night. The bookshelves, the tall window with half-drawn blinds, the glass of water beside her notes. All of it looked softer, darker, more intimate than it did during the day. She wasn't behind the desk. She was sitting in one of the 2 chairs across from it, legs crossed, a red pen in one hand. "Sit," she said simply. I sat. She studied me for a moment, not in a flirtatious way, not even in a friendly way, just focused, like she was still grading something about me I hadn't handed in yet. "I assume you want to pass," she said. "I do." "Then I need something real from you, not another neatly packaged argument, not more regurgitated theory. I want your mind on paper, the real version, the messy, unfiltered one." I tried to swallow the dryness in my throat. "Okay." She nodded once, as if I'd passed a very minor test. Then she slid a sheet of paper across the small table between us. It had a single sentence typed at the top. "Tell me something you've never said out loud." My stomach twisted. "This is your rewrite," she said. One page. By the end of tonight. I stared at the sentence. This is for credit? No, she said, standing. This is for clarity. For you. But depending on what you write, I'll decide if we move forward with your actual rewrite. She walked back around the desk, picked up a folder and sat again. This time in her chair, the high-backed one that made her seem taller than she was. You have 30 minutes, she said. And no one's coming. The way she said it wasn't ominous. It wasn't even suggestive. But something about it lodged itself in the air like a loaded question. I picked up the pen she'd left beside the paper and tried to focus. Behind the silence, behind the scent of tea and dry paper and her perfume, I could feel it. This wasn't about a grade anymore. And whatever happened next, it wouldn't be in the syllabus. The pen felt heavier than it should have. I stared at the paper, at that single line. Tell me something you've never said out loud. I could hear the soft scratch of her pen behind the desk. She was marking something, another student's essay, maybe, or maybe just making notes about me. I didn't dare look. I adjusted my seat. My fingers hovered over the page. I thought of writing something safe, some cliché confession about insecurity or stress, or how I missed my dad since he moved out last year. But none of that felt real, not in the way she meant. The silence in the room felt deliberate, designed. So I started writing. At first, the words came in a trickle, then in bursts. Lines about hiding my thoughts, about pretending to be sharper than I am, about how I rehearse my answers in class so I won't stutter, about how, sometimes, I stare too long at things I shouldn't, people I shouldn't, and how lately, I can't stop thinking about the way she looks when she reads, the stillness of it, the tension behind it. By the time I looked up, 25 minutes had passed. I put the pen down. She didn't look up, cleared my throat. I think I'm done. She set her pen down slowly, deliberately, and stood. Bring it here. I got up, paper in hand, and walked to the desk. She didn't motion for me to sit. She took the paper from my hand without touching my fingers, and read it standing up, eyes scanning line by line. I watched her face. Nothing changed, until one of her eyebrows lifted just slightly. She set the paper down on her desk, then looked at me in full. You wrote about me. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Kind of. She tilted her head. Not kind of. You did. I swallowed. Yeah. A long pause. Then, softly, you know how serious that is? I opened my mouth to explain, to defend it, but she raised a hand. I'm not reprimanding you, she said. I'm confirming that you knew what you were doing. Another pause. I did, I said. She turned, walked to the window, and pulled the blinds all the way shut. The room dimmed further. Just the desk lamp and the faint hum of the building's old heating system remained. She stayed facing the window. You're not the first student to think things, she said. But you might be the first one to write them. I didn't mean to make it weird, I said quickly. She turned, slowly. You didn't, she said, voice calm. But you did make it honest. She stepped away from the window and leaned back on the edge of her desk. Arms crossed, still composed, but her tone had shifted, quieter, more curious than disciplinary. You said something in your piece, she continued, that you rehearse your words so people don't see what's really going on inside. I nodded. She unfolded her arms and pointed toward the chair across from her. Sit. I obeyed. She was standing again, moving slowly behind her desk. Then she sat in her chair, leaned forward slightly, and folded her hands. You're not a boy, she said, and you're not a child with a crush. You understand that, don't you? I held her gaze. Yes. Good. Because I'm not here to play teacher anymore. The room got even quieter somehow. "I'll approve the rewrite," she said. "You'll get the credit. But that's not why you're here." I could feel my heartbeat everywhere. Chest, throat, fingertips. "Then why am I here?" I asked, my voice lower than I expected. Her eyes didn't move. "Because I wanted to see if you'd say what you meant. And now I know you will." She stood, walked around the desk, stopped just beside me. For a moment she didn't move. Then she reached for the top button of her blouse. Her fingers moved slowly. Not seductive, precise. Intentional. One button, then another. She wasn't revealing much. Nothing obscene. Nothing that could get her fired. But it wasn't about the fabric. It was about the silence between each motion. The air growing thicker. She leaned in, not fully, not yet, and said, "This lesson's not in the curriculum." The words landed somewhere behind my ribs. I couldn't move. She pulled back just a little, her eyes scanning my face. Not looking for arousal. Looking for hesitation. She didn't find any. Then she said, almost clinically, "You can stand up now." I did. Slowly. She turned her back to me and walked to the shelf. The distance helped me breathe again. She picked up a slim folder, held it in her hand, and tapped it once against her thigh, then turned. "I want you to come back tomorrow," she said. "Same time." "Why?" "Because you're not done. Not with the paper. Not with me." She handed me the folder. Inside, I could see another blank page. "Write something truer than tonight." I looked up at her. Her expression was unreadable, professional, still fully in control. But the top 2 buttons of her blouse were still undone, and she hadn't fixed them. I nodded once. She walked past me, toward the door, and opened it. I stepped out. Just before the door closed behind me, I heard her voice again, soft, level. "Think carefully about what you're willing to put on paper. It tells me everything I need to know." Then the door clicked shut, and I was standing in the hallway again, holding a folder that felt heavier than before. I didn't sleep that night. Not well, anyway. I kept replaying everything. Her voice, her eyes, the motion of her fingers on those buttons, and most of all, the way she said, "You're not done. Not with me." I told myself it didn't mean anything, but that lie didn't hold for long. The next day moved like fog. I floated through classes, nodded through conversations, forgot to eat. That blank page inside the folder stared at me every time I opened my bag. Write something truer than tonight. Felt like a trap, or an invitation, or both. By the time the sun dipped low and the campus emptied again, I was already walking toward her office. Folder in hand, heart pounding so hard it made my chest ache. This time the hallway felt different, less quiet, more expectant, like the air itself knew what was coming. Her door was open just enough. Warm light spilled out like a whisper. I knocked once. Her voice came softly, "Come in." I stepped inside. She was seated this time, behind the desk, calm, poised, as always. But something in the room had shifted. The blinds were already drawn. The desk lamp was the only light, and beside her on the desk, no papers, no pen, just the tea again, and one glass already waiting for me. "Sit," she said. I did. Neither of us spoke for a while. She just looked at me, eyes steady, focused. Then finally, "Did you bring it?" I slid the folder forward. She didn't open it right away. Instead, she asked, "Did you tell anyone about last night?" I shook my head. "No." "Good." Another pause. Then she opened the folder, took out the page, and began reading. Her eyes moved slower this time, line by line. I had written about the space between wanting and doing, about attention, about the weight of restraint. I had written about her again, not directly, but there was no mistaking it. She reached the end, folded the page in half, then placed it on the desk. She didn't say a word, just stood up, walked around the desk, and stood in front of me. She was close now, so close I could see the faint line of her collarbone where her blouse dipped open. The same 2 buttons were still undone. Maybe more. She reached for her glasses and removed them slowly, set them on the desk behind her. Then she spoke, soft, precise. "You keep writing like that, and you're going to get in trouble." I held her gaze. "With who?" She smiled faintly. "With someone who knows how to read between the lines." I swallowed. "That's the only place I know how to write." She exhaled once through her nose. A half laugh. Then she did something that made my breath freeze. She took one slow step forward, and then another, until she was close enough for me to feel the warmth from her skin. She didn't touch me, didn't move fast, just lifted her hand and traced the back of her finger along the edge of her own neckline. Then her fingers found the 3rd button and unfastened it. Her eyes never left mine. She spoke softly, barely above a whisper. "This lesson's not in the curriculum." The words landed harder this time, because they weren't abstract anymore. They were a choice, an opening, a line. I didn't move. I didn't blink. She studied my stillness like it was a test, and I passed. Then, in one fluid motion, she turned and sat on the edge of her desk. Her posture remained composed, her chin high, one leg crossed over the other. But the air was completely different now, charged, unapologetic. She pointed toward the page she had folded. "That," she said, "was not about theory." "No," I agreed. "You know what it was?" I nodded. "Honest." "Exactly." She tilted her head. "So why stop now?" My pulse hammered. She reached behind her, pulled the drawer open slowly, and took out a 2nd page, blank, then handed me the pen. "Write again," she said. "But this time, don't edit." I didn't. She arched a brow. "Not with your hands. With your fear." I didn't have an answer to that, so I sat at the small table again and began writing. She remained where she was, on the desk, in silence, watching. I could feel her gaze, her breath, her presence, and something else. Permission. Not explicit, not verbal, but it was there, in her stillness, in the undone buttons, in the quiet way she said, "This is the part where most people hesitate. You don't have to." And I didn't. I wrote until the words stopped. Then I set the pen down. She stood, took the page, didn't read it. Not yet. She placed it face down on the desk, then walked to the window, pulled the blinds open just enough for moonlight to spill in, then looked back at me, her voice lower now, thinner, not unsure, just deliberate. "You'll graduate," she said. "But this isn't about school anymore." I nodded once. "I know." She watched me for a long second, then whispered, "And you're still here." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The hallway outside her office felt colder than it should have. I stepped into it slowly, the soft click of the door behind me sounding louder than usual. My hands were empty, but my chest felt heavier, like I was carrying something I couldn't name. I didn't look back, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew if I did, the line between student and something else might fully vanish. And maybe it already had. I didn't go home right away. I walked. No music, no texts, just the quiet of campus at night, the sound of wind through trees, the buzz of old street lamps, the echo of my own steps on cracked pavement. When I got home, I didn't say anything to my roommate, just nodded once, went straight to my room, and shut the door behind me. The folder was still in my bag. I pulled it out. Inside was the second page, still warm from her hands. I didn't read it, because I already knew what it said. Or maybe I didn't care. The next morning, everything felt normal again. Except nothing was. I passed her in the hallway between classes. She was walking the opposite direction, talking to another professor. Her blazer was buttoned, her glasses back on. The same calm, unreadable expression. She didn't look at me, not directly, but just as we passed each other, her fingers brushed the edge of her glasses, just briefly, and in that small, almost invisible movement, I understood. She hadn't forgotten. She just remembered quietly, and maybe that was worse, or better. Couldn't decide. Later that week, she returned our rewritten essays. Mine came back with a new grade on the front. But that wasn't the part that caught my attention. Below it, in her handwriting, were just 3 words. This felt honest. That was it. No corrections. No red marks. Just those words. Like a signature. Like a seal. Like a warning. Days passed. We didn't speak in class. Not beyond what was required. But something lingered in the air whenever I entered the room. The way her eyes would pause just a second too long when calling on someone. The way I'd catch myself waiting, hoping for a flicker of recognition. It never came publicly. Only in the quiet. Only in the space between words. 2 weeks later, I found an envelope in my campus mailbox. No return address. Just my name. Inside, a single sheet of paper. Typed. No title. Just a sentence. When the page ends, what will you do with what's left unsaid? No signature. But I knew the font. I knew the phrasing. I knew the message. And I knew who sent it. I still don't know what to call what happened. It wasn't a relationship. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't even a moment, really. It was a shift, a breach, a crossing of something thin and silent and sacred. And even now, when I think back to that night, the lamplight, the undone buttons, the way she said, "This lesson's not in the curriculum," I don't remember it as scandal. I remember it as clarity. I remember how still she was, how deliberate, how she never touched me, and yet somehow, I felt completely unraveled in her presence. I graduated on time. She wrote a short, formal letter of recommendation. We didn't speak again, but I still have the paper she never read. The one I wrote after she said I was holding back. It sits in a folder on my shelf, folded once through the middle. And every time I look at it, I hear her voice again. Don't edit with fear. That's the part one remember most. Not the whisper, not the buttons, not even the tension, just the challenge. The dare to stop pretending. And maybe that was the lesson all along.